While writing my book, I eventually moved on to the abduction phenomenon. And by this time in my writing, I had decided that there was at the very least something occurring around me. But honestly, I didn't see any parallels to the abduction reports in my life. No lost time, no odd marks, no shadow memories, and no one around me in my family expressed any signs of similar trauma. In fact, my childhood home was made up of 5 biologically unrelated and non-mating co-habitants. If you were running and monitoring a genetic program on this planet, this household would be an uninteresting blind spot to the machine. As I researched more deeply, I discovered that not only had people recorded physical abductions, but psychic abductions. That is, your body isn't taken, but your consciousness is. Although I was only 5 or 6 when the first experience happened, I was not meant to forget my experiences in the same way physical abductees of the genetic program are manipulated to forget theirs. I was meant to remember these events and have a high fidelity and connection over their meaning later in my life, which is to say, they didn't make sense to me as a child, but today the context of the experience has come into focus. I was a little child when this happened, and I was only able to understand what was happening around me within the limits of my experience to that age. I found myself in a Polynesian setting amongst palm trees. The floor seemed cobblestone, and to my left were 5 Polynesian women in grass skirts with their backs to me, standing in bays of stone that looked similar to maybe a voting booth, but without the curtain. I barely have a moment to consider the situation when the women come to me. I cannot describe any faces, but I can hear the female voices. The experience is that they push me into what feels like a soft pile of deviled eggs, saying squish, 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 squish. Next, I find myself tucked into my bed on the top of a barn, and then the bed slides off the barn and falls. And when it hits the ground, I jolt straight up in my bed and wake up. So strange was the experience, I ran upstairs to my parents' room and crawled in between my mom and dad, waking my mom. It wasn't common for me to crawl in bed with my parents, and knowing nothing of my experience, my mom sent me out of the room for waking her. This is the sum of my first contact. It happened again, sometime in the next few weeks. In the second contact, I became aware once again that I was in this same liminal place amongst the palm tree. This time, I realized that I was consciously engaged and mentally asked, how did I get here? I was shown a dock over water, and when I dove into the water, there was a tube that I swam down. Next, I'm looking up at the tube from inside the space, and it reminds me of a submarine portal. I took it now to mean that they brought me through a portal. Shortly thereafter, the Polynesian women in the bays come over and repeat the squish, squish, squish into the same deviled egg pile. Then I'm tucked back tightly in my bed and fall from the barn roof, and in the same way, upon contact, I shoot straight up in my bed again, wide awake. This time, I run upstairs to my mom and dad's, and I crawl between them with the greatest care, lying down at my back, staring at the ceiling. To this day, I can tell you that the falling experience from the barn was so real that to this day it has made me afraid of heights, and I can still feel the fall. That I remember these 2 dreams and my response with such clarity had always been a deep curiosity, and that on page 18 of Starguests, the narration said that by making contact, which is the Peli story called My 7 Minutes in Eternity, it gave these energies greater connection with the contactee. That resonated deeply with my experience. What I have said and done over my lifetime has most definitely been influenced by energies working in ways well beyond anything I can explain. And by making contact when I was young, they have had a greater influence on my life. Peace.